Well, I'm here with an exciting announcement and an update on my church planting adventure. If you're new, let me start by catching you up to speed. In March, I shared with all of you that I have a burning desire to plant a church, one where one doesn't exist, where one is greatly needed, somewhere preferably in the Southeast. In April, Lori and I went to M&A assessment. So our denomination has a grueling week-long process where they assess a couple to determine if they have the gifts and abilities to plant a church. As we shared in April then, that by God's grace, we received the top recommendation to church plant. But not only did they say that, but they also said that we don't need more time necessarily in a mother church to get more experience, that if the Lord were to open an opportunity to scratch plant, that we should consider that as well. And so since assessment, we've looked at both. Mother and daughter situations as well as scratch planting situations, with a caveat. I'm not interested in parachuting into South Dakota. I would like to go to a place where there's other PCA churches that I can work with who are committed to church planting. This spring and early summer has been a wild ride of one step forward and two steps back, as I've talked to many churches and presbyteries throughout the Southeast. As you know, we have 4 school-aged daughters. And so one of our prayers was if the Lord would allow us to move during a summer so that we could get settled before school started. So as this summer progressed, it seemed impossible that the Lord would do anything this summer. But as you know, nothing is impossible with God. We have found this to be true this past month. Things have been coming together at a breakneck pace. Thankfully, our necks have not broken yet, but it has been wild. And the Lord has opened up an opportunity for us to go and church plant just north of Charleston, South Carolina. So that's where we're headed. Since 2010, some of you might know, the greater Charleston area has grown in population by 23%. 23%. There's not nearly enough gospel-preaching churches to minister to the over 761,000 people in the greater Charleston area. So we'll be about 45 minutes from downtown Charleston. If you're familiar with the area, 20 minutes northeast of Summerville. It's in a community called Cane Bay. Cane Bay, they've built 5,000 houses of 10,000 houses. It's this massive community where they have an elementary, middle, high school, big YMCA, a hospital, shops, all kind of stuff. This is right next door to another planned community called Nexton, which will be 6,000 houses. All the expansion in Charleston is going north. Volvo just built a huge plant to join Boeing, Bosch, Cummins, Mercedes-Benz, Google with large production facilities in the greater Charleston area. There's definitely a need there. Last week, Pastor Dwight reminded us that Christ is building his church, and the gates of hell cannot stop the advance of his church. I believe this with every fiber of my being. And so I'm moving my family to Charleston by faith that God will indeed advance and establish his church. Pastor Dwight spoke to us about the vision, the strategy, and the triumph of Christ's church, and how that Christ is building his church even with us. Even with us. Well, as I move there and I take my family there, I'll share the gospel with everyone who will listen. I'll gather together believers as they move to the area, that the world may see that Christ is still on his throne. He is reigning and ruling, pushing back the forces of darkness as he rescues men, women, and children. The Lord has unbelievably made this possible to move just prior to school starting in early August. So let me give you a high-level timeline. So August 4th will be my last Sunday here. But don't worry, I'll be in and out the rest of the fall. So my first 6 months will actually be fundraising. The rest of 2019 will be fundraising. Because when you plant a church, you start as a missionary. You have to raise your full support until the church is established and they can internally support itself. So 2019 is fundraising. 2020, I'll start Bible studies in a small group and grow that, Lord willing, the rest of that year to the point that I can launch the church in 2021. So year after next, start public worship. So Lord willing, after 3 years, the church would become self-sufficient. Brothers and sisters, thank you for walking this wild ride with our family. It has been wild. We never would have survived if not for your prayers, your affirmation, and your support these last 4 months. But please don't stop praying. Church planting is war. Church planting is war. As I said in March, walking this together is unheard of in the corporate world. But thank you for making this possible as my loving church family. I'm so much more prepared to plant a church after serving here for 2 years as your pastor of discipleship and outreach. I said in March, thank you in the past for investing in me. Thank you in the present, or please pray for me. In the future, you can send me out. That future's now. So I close with this, Acts 13, 2 and 3, which I shared with you in March. To the church at Antioch, while they were worshiping the Lord and fasting, the Holy Spirit said, set apart for me Barnabas and Saul for the work to which I have called them. Then after fasting and praying, they laid their hands on them and sent them out. Where's Dwight? There's Dwight. And so it is, I'm sure it was hard for the church at Antioch. It's hard for me. It's hard for you. But thank you for walking this with us.